Hello and welcome back to Redirecting. I want you all to take a good hard listen at the video that I am about to play. This is some extreme racism coming out of General Motors in Ohio. Now, when you listen at this story, take a good hard listen at even what the supervisors are saying and how General Motors are handling things. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the video, and I will be right back.
More than half a dozen black employees at a GM plant say they are facing racist threats and intimidation at work. Their evidence is laid out in a lawsuit with pictures of nooses, whites-only signs, and the N-word they say showed up inside the plant. While GM says it takes discrimination and intimidation seriously and is doing all it can to get rid of the problem, a state law enforcement agency ruled it isn't doing enough. CNN's Sarah Seidner has a story, and I have to warn you, okay? You will hear racial epithets and disturbing language in this story.
Every day he walked into work, Marcus Boyd prayed he'd survive his shift unscathed.
I felt like I was at war, risking my life every day.
Derek Brooks, a former Marine, worked in the same place. Both were supervisors on different shifts at the General Motors transmission plant in Toledo, Ohio. Brooks considers himself tough from his military training, but he struggled to handle what was happening at work.
How rough and tough can you be when you got 11 or 12 people who want to put a noose around your neck and hang you till you're dead?
There's a reason he brings up nooses. It's not just a figure of speech.
This is the picture of the noose that I found the night that I was at work on my shift.
According to a lawsuit now pending against GM, this is one of at least 5 nooses discovered at their workplace in separate incidents. The suit also claims there were signs that blacks were not welcome there. Whites only scrawled on a bathroom wall, along with swastikas on bathroom stalls and niggers not allowed scratched or written on bathroom walls.
This was saying, you don't belong here. This was saying, if you stay here, this is what could possibly happen to you.
In this struggling town, Brooks and Boyd didn't want to leave their 6-figure jobs. Brooks has 8 children. Boyd takes care of his mother, who was an amputee. Now, they and 7 others have sued GM for allowing an underlying atmosphere of violent racial hate and bullying. When did you notice overt racism?
Well, when an employee that was under me, he told me that back in the day, a person like me would have been buried with a shovel.
He said what to you?
That was a death threat, and I was told to push that to the side.
Boyd says he reported the incident.
He admitted to it, and I was pulled to the side and said, you know, if you want to build relationships here, you know, you just let things go, he'll be all right.
But he says the threats got worse. Were you afraid for your life?
Definitely. That's why I left.
When the noose appeared in March of 2017, Derek Brooks says he reported it to upper management. He was sure he was the intended target, but says he was told to investigate by questioning his employees.
It felt like a slap in the face. It did, but I had to be professional.
Brooks and other black employees also noticed being called Dan.
I thought they just mispronounced my name for Derek. Then later I find out that Dan was an acronym for dumbass nigga.
General Motors sent us a statement insisting discrimination and harassment are not acceptable and in stark contrast to how they expect people to show up at work. We treat any reported incident with sensitivity and urgency and are committed to providing an environment that is safe, open, and inclusive. And that every day, everyone at General Motors is expected to uphold the values that are an integral part of its culture. But according to more than half dozen current and former black employees, the problem is the culture. They say inside this plant, racism and harassment are the norm, not the exception.
It is a culture.
It's a culture.
Yeah.
You have to, it's from the top down and the bottom up.
One employee filed a police report. Others filed complaints with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission prior to filing suit.
The ultimate decision that was made is that GM did allow a racially hostile environment.
They allege they investigated quickly and have done remedial things to take care of the problem.
The commission disagrees with that position. GM did not do very much at all, or what they did do was not effective.
GM says that they held mandatory meetings and even closed the plant for a day for training and to address the issue with every shift. The Civil Rights Commission report noted a former union president's testimony that during one of those meetings, a white supervisor said too big of a deal was being made of the nooses. After all, there was never a black person who was lynched that didn't deserve it. The lawsuit alleges that supervisor was never disciplined.
General Motors is supposed to stand for something, right? That's the great American company. Well, what are you doing about this?
A GM representative that we spoke to says that they have not identified those who put up the nooses, and therefore no one has been fired for those incidents. They said, however, that some people have been dismissed in that Toledo plant during what it's calling its extensive anti-discrimination and anti-harassment work, and that work continues today. But Don, guess what else continues?
Yeah.
The racist threats. Just today, we received a picture from inside of the plant sent to an attorney that mentions hanging people. There have been other threats against those who have spoken out, black workers there, threats directed directly at them, and they are now in fear and would not go on camera because they were in fear for speaking out again in case more threats came their way as they're going through this process, Don.
You told us, Sarah, what GM said. What about the union?
So we did speak to a UAW representative, and he said, look, he'd been there for 34 years. There could be some, what he said, bad actors that work there, but he didn't believe that there was widespread intentional racism. Now, he said something very interesting. He says, do I believe that people are a little too sensitive in this day and age? Yes, but you can't say the same things you used to say 20 years ago that you can say now. That is the problem that these workers are talking about, being called sensitive when they're facing these really extreme racial epithets, really extreme behavior, and they're being told to suck it up and get along.
Now, as you've heard in the video, this is some very extreme racism in 2019. Now, no one is shocked. When we report these stories, it's not an issue of being shocked at all by what we are reporting, but making it known to those of you who believe that we are in a post-racial society. Believe it or not, you still have people who believe that and even state that. Not just so-called white people, but black people as well. There are those who believe that this is a post-racial society. But one thing that I noted in the video is that among those who are supervisors in charge, the heads of departments, they were making some very, very bold statements, and I can't believe, let me take that back, I can believe, but how dare GM decide to take the stance, well, there's not much we can do about it. Nobody wants to hear about your training and your policies and your closing down the plant for a day. As I and many others have stated before, you cannot train racism and hatred out of a person's mind and heart. It sounds really foolish to me when I hear someone say that they're going to provide racial sensitivity training and things of that nature. I'm like, so you really think you can sit down and have a white supremacist sit in front of a lecturer or a person who's going to talk to them and say, racism bad, tolerance good, as if they're going to sit there and listen and say, oh, so I'm not supposed to hate black people? Okay, thank you for training me. These people know exactly what they're doing. You can't train racism out of a person's heart. This is something embedded, something that they feel. This is why they were making such threats, saying that you would have been buried with a shovel or putting nooses around. And for the supervisor, I thought this was really interesting for the supervisor to say that there's not one black person who has been hung that didn't deserve it. So are you telling me when they hung whole families, the children as well, are you telling me that they deserved it? Now, that shows you that this country, they don't understand. They try to say that DAN, D-A-N stands for, they said D-A-N word, right? I find it interesting how they can call someone dumb. You all heard what the video actually said. How can you call someone dumb and you're acting like the worst type of nitwit with all of this behavior? To me, racism is ignorant, especially when you have people saying some of the things that these reprobates are saying. Here you have professional black men, supervisors. You won't give them any respect. You're just showing how childish and ignorant you are. But you want to call them Dan, standing for dumb ASS Negro? These people are really, really something. They are a pathetic group of people. And I'm talking about racists. I'm not talking about every so-called white person. I'm talking about those who are racist and filled with hate. Because when you think that these men should sit back and not deal with it, or should I say deal with it, they should sit back and not say anything, you are the one who has some type of mental disorder to think that these men should put up with this type of ignorance. Anyway, I wanted to say that I think it's time that we start boycotting these companies more and more. Just taking a stand and saying, look, you know what, GM, I don't want your products anymore. I will get a Ford. Not saying that Ford is not a company that has racism, but when they start showing these things and saying, look, I'm not going to handle this. I'm not going to speak out against it. And my stance is, hey, what do you expect me to do? I mean, just deal with it. That's when they make a public display like that. We should make a public display and say, you know what, your numbers are going to go down this term, because I know we need vehicles, family, but make a point of saying, look, I'm not going to buy a GM vehicle until you all do something about these racist people at that plant. Because as long as we continue to just buy and support these companies and ignore how they treat us, they will continue doing what they're doing. They're going to continue not to say anything to their employees who are discriminating against others. They're going to continue to close their ears to it and pretend like they don't know what's happening. Because they say we're going to continue to sell vehicles regardless. But if we stop being those who are buying, their numbers will shrink. So, hey, that's my take on it, family. We should start boycotting these companies. When they treat us this way, we should make a point. And hey, if we have to, just get a vehicle that's made by Asians. Not that they're any better, but we need to make a point when companies directly and boldly treat us like trash. That's just my take on it, family. I know we're in between a rock and a hard place, not having manufacturing companies that we produce our own products and different things of that nature. But again, there is a standard that we need to set when you are bold and open and blatant with your disrespect towards us. Okay, family, with that, I'll say shalom. Be sure to ring the bell to be notified of new uploads on this channel, and also comment, share, like, and subscribe.